This morning, it has just gone 5 minutes away from 7 o'clock thanks to our partner Mazda. The National Party wants to see teachers get back to the basics with a bigger focus on reading, writing and maths. The party introduced its policy yesterday, including a standardised assessment of student progress for primary students. It's been criticised, though, as a return to the party's failed national standards scheme, which was introduced last time it was in government. Joining me this morning to debate, Henderson Intermediate Principal Wendy Esera and New Zealand Initiative Senior Fellow Michael Johnston in Wellington. Morena, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you with us. Wendy, can I start with you? What is wrong with assessing everybody against the same standard across the country?
All of our children, for a start of all of our children, are different. I want to also start by saying that when I read that yesterday, I was horrified because, yes, it is. It's like national standards take two. The first version failed. We know it failed, and so here's another shot at it. But also it's insulting in terms of it implies that we are not already in schools teaching reading, teaching writing, teaching maths every day. Because certainly it happens in my school, and I don't know a school where that doesn't happen.
No one's saying that it's not being taught, just that it's not being taught well enough. I mean, you must admit that we have huge issues with basics in our students. I mean, 15-year-olds, a third of 15-year-olds can't write properly. That's a problem, isn't it?
Well, OK, let's talk about what happens right when children start school. Children start school and in the infant classes there are certain things that have to happen, and they do, and then they move through the primary school and then they get to secondary school. Every single learner who comes into our classes is dealing with a whole heap of other stuff, not just the learning that's in front of them, not just the reading and the writing and the maths. And when we think about New Zealand schools right now, and we've had the last couple of years with all the COVID stuff, with the time that children have been disengaged from school, not through their choosing, to me...
So it's not the curriculum, it's not actually what's being taught, it's everything else that's going on in life.
It is.
Can I ask you, Michael, thank you for being with us this morning, is what National's proposing now just a carbon copy of national standards, or is there a difference here?
I think there's a big difference. When national standards was introduced last time around, teachers were not given any tools to make their judgments. They had to just make it up, more or less, out of what they saw in front of them. That resulted in massive unreliability in the data. And I think the other really critical difference here is that the measurement is backed up with intention to reform curriculum and to reform the way these very key skills are taught. And look, Wendy's right, of course, that children come into school in very different places and they progress at different rates. But, you know, this is a measure of progress over time rather than point in time. So I think that's a really critical thing too. But, you know, the main thing to me is actually the intention to change the way in which teachers are trained and to give professional development to teachers in these areas, because, you know, it certainly isn't teachers' fault that they haven't been taught to teach reading, writing and numeracy in the most effective ways, following scientific evidence about how the human brain works.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the really key thing. If we get that right, that will make the big difference.
Yeah, it does seem crazy. Wendy, does it seem crazy that in our curriculum it doesn't specifically tell you what to teach and the sequence in which you should teach it?
Well, it does, and the New Zealand curriculum right now is being revised, but forgetting about the fact that that revision is happening already, the government's underway with that already. The current curriculum, 2007, which is when that came in, basically that curriculum, which we're still working with, if you like, moving towards the revised one, it is very clear about what a child at the end of year one should be able to do in terms of reading, writing and mathematics. It's very clear about end of year two, end of year three, end of year four. So teachers do know what to teach, and they are teaching what they need to teach.
But the students obviously aren't learning it in the same way they used to, because otherwise we wouldn't be seeing all these problems that we are once they get to secondary, etc., right?
Well, again, I'm going to come back to, all the other factors that come into that equation. If a child isn't attending school, how can they be achieving? If a child is going home to a household where they don't even have a bed to sleep in. If a child is they are arriving in New Zealand, like we have so many children in our school who are English second language learners. How on earth can they therefore be ranked on an English set test when it's not even their first language?
I totally understand those issues. Michael, for you, with the curriculum as it stands, you have an issue with what you've described as some vague concepts, like managing self and relating to others. Do these concepts, do these things belong in the curriculum?
I don't think they belong in the curriculum. I think they belong in the environment of schools. But, you know, setting that aside, the issue to me is that the curriculum is threadbare. I have to respectfully disagree with Wendy that it makes it clear where children should be. There's very little in the curriculum at all. It's an extremely thin document. I've seen a draft of the refreshed curriculum and it's a little bit better, but not much. But actually, to me, the curriculum, I mean, that's important, but more important is what teachers learn when they're trained about how the human brain works, and especially there's a wealth of evidence and research on how to teach reading, and we're not doing it that way. That to me is the main issue. And you know, yes, I take Wendy's point that there's all kinds of social problems that teachers have to deal with in schools, no doubt about it. But you know, our literacy data have been declining for 20 years, and it's not just, you know, those tests out of the ministry last year. It's the national monitoring data, it's
the PISA data,
the international tests are showing the same thing. Sadly, it's been going on for a long time.
Sadly, the evidence is stacking up in the wrong direction in that regard. I have to leave it here.
Really
thank you both so much for coming on the show. Great to have you, Wendy, as always. Henderson Intermediate Principal Wendy Esera and New Zealand Initiative Senior Fellow Michael Johnston. It is 7 o'clock. You're watching AM.